Okay, we've got the okay from management. They're telling us that we can go to our breakout sessions now and continue with our games for children in language immersion. So I believe the tech people will be separating us. Cass will have a session, I'll have a session, and Bimikawe will have a session as well.
All right, and then I just want to add one more thing. I'm going to put the discussion question in the chat that we're going to talk about. We were talking about it a lot during the presentation, but what are some games you use in language immersion in your own community? Or if they're not in a language, how could you develop them or adapt them to be full immersion in culture and both language? And another thing to add, the bookmaking resource, you can find it on the platform. Ours has been translated into Anishinaabe. So if you're looking to use that resource, it's there, and you can translate it in your own languages too, of how to make the book, and then some vocabulary associated with it too. So just those two things, and I think we're ready to go, unless you got anything to say, Bim. Good.
Thumbs up. All right, here we go. We're going into our breakout rooms.
Bonjour. Excuse me. Might notice my audio isn't as crisp as it was. I have to use a separate system over here, but it should be fine. So I guess we'll just wait a couple more seconds for everybody to come in. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I wanted to say miigwech for all of your good ideas, and we'll bring them here and maybe go into more detail about each one. And as we mentioned before, we'll have a we'll be taking notes, and we hope to compile a list of these games and activities that you can then work off of, because we might know like quite a few individually, but coming together we could really put a significant list together. So okay, so excuse me, so we've got about half an hour. So again, the discussion question is, so what are some games you use in language immersion in your own community, right? We realize that not everybody is doing immersion with their own language yet, but so if that is the case, how could you develop games to be in full immersion, right? So as I mentioned in our talk, we don't want to necessarily reinvent the wheel in developing brand new games. If you have, that's great, and I hope you share them here. But it's things that you already do in your community. How could you create those into a full immersion space? Right? Mm-hmm. And feel free to unmute. Otherwise, you can just type it in the chat, and I'll read it as well. No pressure to unmute or turn on your camera. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think we as Indigenous people or Anishinaabe people like a natural environment. So I think when we learn anywhere, it's nice to be in an environment where you're feeling safe, You have the availability to leave if you'd like to. Sometimes when we have our language, sometimes it's nice to just be able to talk and not feel you're not speaking it right, you know, like those kind of things. And having that openness to everybody that's trying to learn the language is really important. And learning to put yourself in other people's shoes and where they are in their language of development, and just supporting each other is really, I think, is really very good to help us become immersible in our language. So doing games and going outside and just like talking one another in a practical way, like go grocery shopping, go and speak only in the language, pick the vegetables that are all in the language that you need for a recipe, and then come back to your community and cook it and, you know, only speak the language. So like those kind of things are practical. It's not really set up in a classroom type feeling. So those are my opinions.
Yeah, those are great. Yeah, I really appreciate uh, your words. So, so to go off that, like you mentioned, things that are very practical, right?
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have to be in their own category of games, right, or activities. But when we want to, when we want to teach in our language, in our target language or indigenous language, we want to be teaching things that will be relevant to them, things that they'll be using daily or commonly, right? Like, it might be fun to teach somebody how to sail, but how often does the average person go sailing, right? So teaching them how to, teaching words and phrases about buying groceries, right? Different fruits, what they taste like. Hey, how much is this? Would you like to lend me $5? Oh, you're broke? Oh, dang. Okay, I guess. Guess we can't
exactly, but it's true. Like a practical everyday skills that you're using is how you're going to learn it. I feel like even me as a beginner, it's something I'm learning. But I'm a visual learner, so I need to, so like when we had storytelling, I can kind of understand what he's saying in a story, but I don't see it visually. So I tend to kind of doze off in a storytelling setting. And I feel like we also have to understand that everybody's not the same. So having the ability I would go and sit and draw and listen to the story and try to write down or draw things that whoever the storyteller is saying, because sometimes I cannot understand it through just speaking or hearing. I need to visually see it. So like having that availability too for other student learners is really important.
Yeah, and I like that you bring that up too, because we all do learn in our own ways, in different ways, and so here's a big disclosure that so I'm a second language learner, right? Right? Like I didn't speak Ojibwe as a kid, but so as a learner, I've utilized a lot of practical, tried and true methods to learn as much as I know, which is still but a lot of people learn with games, right? A lot of people learn in games and activities, in various settings. I personally, I don't actually find games to be very beneficial for me, right? So why am I here preaching about talking about games, right? It's because I know that a lot of people, I know it's beneficial for a lot of other people, for most other people, right? Just not for me.
Yeah, exactly. And so having that open space for you to be like, okay, well, I don't really enjoy games, but I enjoy maybe writing about what I'm listening to, or, having that availability of different options, as a learner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And, maybe I'm not the best at facilitating games, but maybe I'm better at, writing writing the words and vocabulary for this game, or creating the template that other people can use, or maybe I'm better suited somewhere else, right? We all have our own unique abilities, our strengths, right? And we all have a place in this. But another thing that you mentioned that I wanted to pick up on too is engaging in natural environments, right? So that can be, a home could be considered a natural environment, right? And the bush could be considered a natural environment, right? Well, certainly is natural. And yeah, and it's not difficult to create games for those spaces. And one thing I wanted to mention too that I left out was that I'm a big believer in non-competitive games for children. Not always, but when they're really young, non-competitive games are really fun. So, but there isn't a very long list of those. So some things you can do in a natural environment, such as the bush, is teaching about identifying leaves and trees. If you have somebody with you, identifying the uses of these specific tree barks and leaves. There's lots of different things you can do in a natural environment. And some would argue it's a more suitable space for our indigenous languages. And I understand that point as well, because there's a lot more words and vocabulary that are already used in those spaces than there are, say, in like a steel factory. So yeah, that's a good point. I like that you brought that up. So so the question, what are some things that people that you've seen or that are already being used in your community that you could put into an immersion space, easily convert into a game that would be fun in immersion?
Well, immersion. We speak of immersion all the time, and then with COVID being in place yet across our Mikinako Benisting island, yeah. So we're starting to have our TPs. We used to call them our TP sessions. We invite a group for 2 week stay at your house. It could be usually two couples worked well. It could be adult learners. So that immersion is done quite easily in that way. And I've experienced that myself firsthand. And when I go out on the land with my relatives, they ask me, "Do not speak English." So because I am not teaching in elementary level or anything like that. I'm not even in the high schools. I'm usually in the colleges or universities. May it be Zoom today, different universities, different colleges. It's so easy to do now. But we're losing that human touch. So we need to get back to that, back into the classrooms, which is very different. And when I say, we're talking of games, but activities, one time, this is going back a few years, activity was to put something together with natural elements. And here we are sitting in a classroom. All the students forgot it was today that we were going to do that. You're supposed to bring all the supplies. Not one. So I said, you got 15 minutes to leave this classroom, to go in an opening in the bush, you get what you need to make something. And they all looked at me, it was all silence. It was one of the funnest class we've had, that little short session. They all brought something back, they all made something, and that was being really resourceful, to the extreme in timing. So with that, we had rocks, a cynic, a tigo, you know, Nibishan, you know, Ushkusawan. And then, so we made all that, and then we made a list of after, like, what all stuff that you brought, and you know, everything. So we made a list, and I can't remember exactly of how many pieces of you know they picked up, you know, all kinds of stuff. And I think we had like 80 words
Mm.
we were going to learn from each other, because each specific group, you know, like they we teamed up, they had to learn, you know, like probably 10 each. So it was interesting in a fashion like that. So in that way, it was kind of an immersion kind of idea. But if you're at home, yeah, like I'm just looking at your background there. Wasitchigan. Wasitchigan big.
Mhm.
No, Wasitchigan is the window, right? Wasitchigan big is the plate of glass singular without the frame, right? And then the Kutodaban is your little car there, your bicycle.
Yeah, it is.
And I'm working on a project right now with a couple other linguists that I'm working with. We are trying to piece together a vehicle, Odabanes, a car, our modern day technology car. We're trying to name the pieces in that.
Mm.
Very, very, you know, it's going to be a lengthy project. We've already kind of put together the Model A, because I was only like 64 pieces on that car or something like that. But today's car is very different, you know. Big electric block underneath there is that big electric, you know, battery.
Hmm.
So stuff like that. I ask classes, you know, people I know, challenge yourselves to something new, you know, and because let's not forget the old language, like the stuff that's been around, but let's look at something new, because when we leave this earth, you know, we don't know how it's going to look like. Your grandkids, my grandkids, you know, they're going to be flying around with rockets, maybe. So the immersion is you can take immersion exactly where you are, like wherever you are, and the resources are there. Like Guakaigan, your home, you know, you got your floor, you know, Osmisak, your wall, Spisak is your ceiling, you know, the Ogidagamik is your upstairs. What do they call that? Ogidagamik.
Oh, like on top of it, eh?
Yeah, on top your like your upstairs in
Mhm.
your house. What do they call that? Ogidagamik. What do you
Hmm.
think? Anybody out there?
A house on top of a house.
No. Like your attic space in your house. That's
Oh,
people
okay.
used to sleep up there. Ogidagamik, they say. Or
Huh.
today we could use it as the second floor of a house. Ogidagamik.
Hmm. Interesting. I'm gonna write that one down.
No, that came to be in you know, we got to look back 40, 50, 60 years ago. Homes were built somewhat similar but different. You slept up in the attic, the you know floor space, but you crawled around there because you couldn't stand up because the height wasn't there. So that's why we say ogidik, your knee,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
house of the knees. Ogidagamik. Right now,
Okay.
eh? But
Mhm.
that's you know that's why because you had you lived up there on your knees.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that, and I like that. You know, even in like in a house or like a vehicle, like you're saying, like today, you know, or tomorrow's vehicle or today's vehicle looks much different, but we can still have words and ways to describe it. But one thing you mentioned earlier is, you know, the natural elements, working with the natural elements and natural things outside, and how you had, you know, a lot of fun with your class during that time. It reminds me of my time when I was teaching in Ojibwe immersion. Like a lot of our time is in the classroom, but we also take 2 weeks to go ricing, right, outside of the classroom. We also spend a couple hours, you know, just over an hour every day setting traps, setting snares, and they have to go check their snares. And then come March, the whole month of February, we're teaching them words and vocabulary about the sugar bush, everything that's used, how it's done, why it's done, right? And by the time we actually get out to the sugar bush, they're very confident in what they know. They have the older grades teaching the younger grades. And, you have 80, 90 students out there. You can get a lot of work done in the sugar bush really quickly. So you got to create, games and activities you can play out there. And one of the ones we did was, scavenger hunts, right? Relatively straightforward. You have your list of items that they could possibly find, including birds or squirrels, or if it's late in the season, frogs. Scavenger hunt, and having the students describe the things that they found. That's another great non-competitive game or activity they can play. But really taking advantage of the space where the language thrives. Yeah. I'm just noticing here too that Jesse had a comment, a game that they played at a conference. Not sure the name of it, but maybe SWAT game. They used fly swatters and Velcro is glued on the fly swatter, I'm guessing. Word cards are written in syllabics. Those cards have Velcro glued on there. Players each have a fly swatter, and there's one person who says one of the words. Players have to look for the word and use their fly swatter to try and get the word first. It's a fun game to do. You have to try and read and find the word. Younger grades like kindergarten can use pictures for the game. Okay, yeah, so that sounds like a lot of fun. Sounds like it could get it out of hand for some classrooms, but it sounds very fun as well. So thank you, Jesse. We'll make a note of that one. It's fun. So what other games or activities, right, have you seen in the past, or are you currently working on in your community that could make an easy transition into Ojibwe immersion? And when we say Ojibwe immersion, we really mean there's only Ojibwe spoken there, right? Yesterday, my wife Cassandra talked about the importance of Ojibwe immersion and ways of creating those spaces, and we need to fill time in those spaces, right? So one of those ways is with games and activities, and so in an immersion space, if there's 10% English, sorry, if there's 10% English, or it's immersion for half the day, that's not really immersion technically, right? It's Ojibwe all the time. That's the goal, right? So we gotta think of games and activities we can play in those spaces.
We had, I think yesterday we talked about curriculum in some way, touching base on the curriculum. Like it doesn't change too much, but it's quite loaded when you actually look at the curriculum from the Ontario guideline. But now, in taking that and putting it into an immersion style, I think it would kind of make it even. It does. You wouldn't look at it as one heavy load. Like when you look at it, it's quite daunting to a student. We're going to cover all this. Is why I'm saying that, because a lot of the stuff that is covered in Ontario curriculum in the college level, we're not even there with that book. Like, we cover some of it, but we're not there. Like, I mean, it seems like the elementary is actually academically more higher in the value of the versus some of the college courses that I've seen. Like, I mean, it doesn't meet that. So, like, we're totally do two different ideas. So, in an elementary setting, I think it would be easier to do because we just kind of put it out there. We know what we have to cover in that day to satisfy the ministry, and it would just kind of spread it out. Like, I mean, I'd like to do 1 year of that just for experience wise, and then to say I've done it. But that's how that would be my approach in that way.
Yeah, well, what makes things, something that's interesting in that, well, you realize early on is, when you're teaching at an immersion school or immersion environment or house or whatever it is, the key thing to remember is like, we're not teaching the language, we're teaching in the language, right? So what comes with that is I don't have to teach my students, what a preterite is, what a preterite dividative is, what verbs are. Like I teach them what they are, but I can kind of throw out all the grammar that I need to, that I needed to utilize to learn Ojibwe. I don't have to teach that to them. They pick up a lot of things naturally. However, you're right. That task of converting a curriculum, even for one grade, into Ojibwe is very daunting, and one that is certainly shied, at least a couple of people away from doing such a thing. But it can be done, right? The Ojibwe Immersion Language Institute that I worked at, they started from kindergarten, and every year they kept building the next curriculum for the next grade, and now they're at grade 12, and they have curriculum for every subject, all in Ojibwe language. You don't got to do it all overnight, but you have to do it, right? And meeting ministry guidelines. It's so it's called Wadukodadim Ojibwe Immersion Institute. Something interesting about, well, I mean, one of the things that people find interesting is that even though there's no English taught in this school, there's no English at all. As instructors, we're not allowed to speak English, right? There's very few rules, but the one rule in this whole school that is number one is no English, right? And the students perform just as well, if not better, on state-mandated tests, and better delivered in English. So even though we don't teach, even though the students there aren't taught in English, they still perform or outperform English-speaking students on state-mandated tests and exams. So something to think about. Anyways, so the school is called Wadukodadim. Never heard of it. It's in Hayward, just out of Hayward, Wisconsin, in a reserve there called Odawa Zagaigan, or Makutere. And they've been running for just over 20 years now. So, okay, so I'm seeing we have just under 3 minutes left. So if anybody has any last comments about any other potential games or activities you think would be very well engaging in immersion, feel free to insert it in the chat or unmute yourself and let everybody know. Did you ever hear or play the fart game? Yeah, that was created by Donis Kennedy over in Winnipeg at the MICEC, I think, Manitoba Indigenous Curriculum Education Center or something like that. Yeah, I can't remember the exact acronym, but yeah, she, Donis and the team over there produce a lot of very engaging, fun things, such as that game, the Bugade game. And for those that are unaware, Bugade in Ojibwe means he or she farts, passes gas. And the game is designed to teach you prefixes and suffixes of, who's farting? Oh, I'm farting. He's farting. We're all farting. And it's really silly, really fun. It's designed to teach you how to say, we're doing this action. Everybody's, somebody's doing an action. But yeah, it's very fun. I want to play that game. Yeah, it's very fun. My friend had it, and we got to play it. So, scavenger hunt, iPads outdoors, then add other words to those. Yep, that's a great suggestion. Scavenger hunts, incorporating modern technology, such as iPads. You can use that action with other words. Yeah, and that too, right? You can take out your Bugade verb and insert another one, and easily recognize the prefixes and suffixes. So we got 5 seconds before we're kicked out, and we'll go back into the main room. So thank you, everybody.
All right, Cass is there, and I suspect we're waiting for Bimikawe and some others to. That was a very good session. People really enjoyed that, and so thank you for suggesting people share their activities and games, because there are so many innovative and fun games that came out of that session. We touched on traditional games, board games, outdoor activities, and because of the COVID lockdown and everybody could not see each other in person, how teachers had to adapt and use the internet to play games and of course lessons with the students. It forced us to adapt, and I was one of them. I had to train myself how to do Zoom and how to do recordings from home, and so it's been a real curve for me, a real learning curve, but we did it, and so here we are. So Cass, did you want to wait a little bit more, or did you want to share? Oh, here he is. Bimikawe, hello.
Here I am.
Yeah, he's gonna sit beside me.
You're back from the kitchen. You're out there making a sandwich.
Slaving away over here.
Okay, good guy.
Well, as I mentioned, thank you for coming up with that fun way to come up with new games, activities for the kids, and we got a ton of suggestions, and I know that the teachers shared so many wonderful ideas that they jotted them all down. So, games not just for the kids but also for the adults. I got pages of stuff here. Did you want me to mention a few?
Yeah, do you want to do a share back of some of the games that you talked about? We're going to compile them into a document after to share out again, but it'd be nice to hear some of it.
All right, here we go. Michael, and this came up time and time again, a scavenger hunt. I like that idea. The teacher would put the kids out on a scavenger hunt in a bag. There's a bag, and then you reach in and you would have to look for a rock. Maybe somebody pulls out a feather or an acorn, and then off they go. So a scavenger hunt in language, but also a learning experience. But it was, I thought, I never would have thought of a scavenger hunt. And it came up time and time again that the youth didn't even know that they were learning language. They just knew that it was a fun activity, and off they went, right? Everybody's happy. Yahtzee, the game Yahtzee, that came up several times, and apparently there is a Yahtzee game that somebody came up with. I can't remember what community it was, but there is Little Traverse Bay made an Anishinaabewin Yahtzee game, and it's a hit for sure. And so thank you to Clarice. Clarice had some wonderful ideas there, but Yahtzee came up time and time again. Bingo, of course, is popular in the community, and Dorothy suggested bingo using colors, animals, or numbers for bingo. Fruit basket. I've never played the fruit basket game, but I think you upset the fruit basket and there's colors, and you can use colors or animals in the fruit basket. Flashcards came up time and time again. You can memorize the flashcard. Oh, this was good. So you have a bunch, maybe 4 or 5 flashcards. You have the kids out in front of you. You show, you know, a bear, a deer, an owl, something, you know, different animals, and then you take one away, and then you show them again, and which one is missing. So the kids would have to figure out, remember what animal is missing. I thought that was good. What's in the bag? that sounds like a fun game too, right? Translating poems into language or songs. You know, and the kids love the hip hop these days. I don't know, like with the modern dance music, if you translated like Beyonce or somebody, that would be something. This was a good one. Comic books. Comic books are so popular, as we all know, superheroes and whatnot. Someone would take a comic book and then put the talking bubbles over the heads of the characters in the comic books, and then you would create your own story or write in language, whatever that character might be saying. So comic books, pardon me, translating songs. The nursery rhyme song, I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but that sounds like fun. And Flora is so popular with the kids, there she is there, that they always request the nursery rhyme song. And that's where you translate nursery rhymes into language and then have everybody sing it. And it involves lots of action as well. So number play games in a number counting. Oh yeah, the numbers game. I guess you count up and up and up. And because there's 31 days in a month, the kids would learn up to 31. So every week or whatever, they would learn a certain set of numbers until they get to 31. The syllabic song with pictures and flashcards, that keeps coming up as a big tool. Mary suggested for kindergarten, take kids out on the land. I thought that was great. So take kids out on the land and have them explore. But she has a spin the wheel with animals on it. So you spin the wheel, and then if it stops on a goose, then the kids make the sound of a goose or pronounce the word goose or something. So you spin the wheel. It could be a moose, it could be a goose. It's going to be a noisy classroom for sure. And I thought this was cool, identifying animal tracks. You go outside and it doesn't matter if it's winter or fall or summer, because you're going to find tracks. So that's, I thought that was fun. There's another game came up with blue chair or rainbow chairs. So you'll have to review our session to see what that one is all about. But it involves color and it sounds like a lot of fun. You know, a lot of teachers use colors and shapes like a circle, a heart, a star, and a square, perhaps on flashcards, but I think that's fun. Get this one, hopscotch. Hopscotch, and I thought, well, in Ojibwe numbers on the hopscotch, but here's the thing. I thought, well, how can you play that in the winter? But I'm not very smart. They said they use Bristol board to make the hopscotch across the floor, and then the kids are hopping around. I'll be done soon. Here we go. People are running out of ideas out there, so she thanked, Clarice thanked everybody for sharing your games, activities for the kids here. And the W5 game, and you'll again have to review our session how that works, but it's who, what, where, when, and why. So you could make a story about Santa Claus. Who? Santa Claus. Where? Well, it was on Manitoulin Island. When, you know, who, what, where, and so on and so forth. At the end, then you have a sentence, a crazy sentence, maybe about Santa Claus. And so the W5 game. And Doreen, who teaches grade 5 through 9. Oh yes, the COVID lockdown. The kids got new tablets, and she was able to communicate with her class at home. And so she had to update her technical knowledge, and as I have had to. And she plays all kinds of games, the Cahoots game, and she recommended a website called Quizlet, where you plug in the syllabics and then games automatically are generated. So the internet is coming to recognize language, but it's called Quizlet. I guess Quizlet.com perhaps. And there are more and more websites out there to help with language. So that's what our group came up with.
Amazing. I could only imagine a weekend with all of those people. A lot of games.
Very fun.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
But
Oh, so yeah. So a lot of the games you mentioned, and I'm looking at the list of the other room. I don't want to give don't want to overlap too much, but one of the themes that I noticed came out of your group as well as mine was an emphasis on the space being a natural environment. So outside, in the bush, you know, outside the classroom, wherever, you know, there were a lot of great ideas in those spaces, especially, you know, scavenger hunts came up a lot as well. You know, you can do a traditional scavenger hunt, you know, have a piece of paper. You can have a scavenger hunt, you know, go find something that's crinkly, go find something that's hard, that's you know, soft, whatever, right? And there was another one of this fly swatter game that I need to find more about. I didn't get too much information about it, but you, once again, utilizing flashcards, right? Place them you know, all over the classroom of various either nouns or verbs, and then, you know, you tell your students, you know, go find you know, this thing, and then they go around and, you know, smack it with their fly swatter. So I could easily see that getting out of hand, but
yeah, very out of hand.
it could be fun. Yeah, it could be fun. But yeah.
All right, my group, we had a lot of different types of game making. So puppetry and using puppets to tell stories or to play games with children, but also making clothing for the puppet and doing that in an immersion, and bringing our old used cloths or materials from home and remaking them into new things. So creating puppets with our children or adults. And we had a comment about making everything into a game. So even if you're just sitting in the room and you can like imagine the floor is lava, or using your hands to count numbers, but just turning everything into a game is a real talent. And the people who are able to do that, like, big shout out to you, because we love you. And so then we talked about mini race games. So just putting that competition into things, a little bit of competition to see who can identify things the fastest, to play Go Fish, Yahtzee, I Spy, Bingo, Kahoot, the Quizlet. And we had a Buju ball. So you have the ball and you say, Buju, Cassandra and Dishnika's, Gindash. And then that person would be like, hi, my name is, and pass the ball and start generating conversations with the ball. And I wonder what that would be like if you had multiple balls going at the same time. So you have to be like, Buju, Buju, Buju. But having a game like that creates conversation, and, you know, you got to be aware. So that was fun. Games and music. And then we touched on a lot of traditional games. So Tabahan, I think that's what it's called. It's like a stick string game, or tug of war, miniature sleds, snow snake, lacrosse. So a lot of the games that we played historically in our communities and continue to play, and using the but using the things around us to play those games. And that was really exciting to talk about. And yeah, then Deal or No Deal. So pretty much adapting and developing games that we already play into the games we have today. So lots of fun, lots of conversation.
Yeah, and you know what is interesting is that the traditional games that our ancestors played, like Snow Snake and whatnot, and those are more physical, of course, and perhaps for older students, but you know, involving phys ed and outdoor activity, and just, I guess, explaining how the game would be played, or you know, what our ancestors did. So I think that's something that you know, we have the indigenous games. You know, a lot of the students work towards that, and some of them actually get to participate and travel to the indigenous games of North America, which I think is amazing. And a lot of those games, I think, happened up in Nunavut at one time. So, you know, perhaps incorporating, you know, on a grander scale, those physical sports, and learning about that in language, of course.
Mhm. And I see in the chat that Harriet, I think, is referring to the Buju ball game, but playing that with a ball of yarn and then getting all entangled. That would be so fun. And having to work through language to untangle, like lift your arm, do this, that would be quite fun. But basically, we also know that our time is nearing the end. So we want to say thank you. And we hope that this discussion was really used to spark imagination and maybe inspire you with some new games. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel, as we said earlier, but we have a lot of talented and skilled people in our communities that know all these different types of games. And so how do we bring them into our classrooms? How do we create immersion games out of that? And so on. So Miigwech, from me, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, Miigwech.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Well said. I know that Little Bear enjoyed it, and games for the children in language immersion. Everybody give a internet applaud to Cass and also Bimikawe. Miigwech, you guys, we'll talk to you again down the conference trail somewhere.
Hi. Hi, anybody hear me?
I hear you.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I've been trying to get somebody's attention, waving and waving.
I thought
Yeah.
you were just flirting with me. I'm sorry. Go ahead. It's Colleen. Hello, Colleen.
Yeah. No, I now I'm blushing.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a question. Not to put anybody on the spot here, but given that I live off reserve and I'm an urban off reserve native, that I'm trying to look for that USB stick that's originally for only Swampy Creek people. Does anybody know where I can get that from?
Are you talking about the Ojibwe, like the Ojibwe and Creek Cultural Center? Like they have a lot of resources there. Are you talking about a USB stick full of language?
Yes, I tried there already and they don't have it. So I'm trying to find out who has that. If they could please share with me that USB stick, so that way I can plug it into my laptop and I can help people that way too, because I have it on my phone. I could type out no, some of the stuff, not to say I know everything too either. Like for this example, I have this on my just bear with me. I have this on my phone. Where's the other? Where'd it go? Like I have this on my phone. If you look at the chat box, I'm able to do it on my phone. Through my phone, but I can't do it through a laptop. That's why I'm trying to look for that USB stick or something. Yes, that's what I go through. I'm trying to look for Mushkego education at Mushkego. Okay, I'll try that. Okay, I seen it in the box. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Lorraine.
Yes,
And thank you, Colleen.
yes,
The sharing circle is awesome.
yes. And nice to meet new people again, because I am the I also translate for NAN on
Right.
virtual meeting. Yeah, virtual or in person. Thank you.
Okay, Miigwech. All right, you two, they're gone. They are exhausted and they are gone. All right, I believe that is our session for now. We're going to take a break and we'll be back at 4 o'clock to have our closing prayer from our elder. So get some tea into you, some bannock, and we will see you in just a little bit here. Miigwech.